Guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Today we're back here with Green Scorpion with the first of the new Monster Month. First up, top 10 video game demons. So, I don't know if he's going to count half demons, otherwise I don't think we're going to see Dante, Virgil, and or Nero here. Remember, I mean, I'm not sure he's going to count that, but probably. But I guess we'll have to see what his rules are. If not, well, I can already tell who's going to be there. Other than that, I don't know any other demons. I think something might pop up if we watch. So, let's get this party started. Let's get to see the top 10 video game demons. Be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Here we go. Man, good to be back. Oh, demon. That makes sense. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I guess Ganon would actually count as a demon too. Or that would be more demise, I don't know. Let's see. It's gotta be interesting. I don't think Akuma counts. He's still a human. Here we go.
Trick or treat, everybody. The Green Scorpion here, ready to ring in the month of mischief and mayhem with a resurrected classic. While many of you remember my favorite gimmick, Weapons Month, less might remember way back in the ancient time of 2016 when I tackled a gauntlet of
8 years ago now.
Countdowns, Monster Month. I hit some of the favorites: zombies, ghosts, vampires, werewolves, and skeletons. This year, however, we're taking a few more classic staples alongside some more out-of-the-box choices. And we're starting with one of the most requested from last time, the inverted pinnacle at the depth of depravity, demons. Now, let's get our terms straight here,
like
since
angels?
on its own, demon is just a word that could identify any monster depending on the circumstances.
True.
In fact,
think of like a generalized term, like Japan with yokai.
No moral connotation to it whatsoever. It's just a term for a spirit or a supernatural entity.
True.
The idea of a war between diametric good and evil beings actually comes from proto-Hindu religions. It was adopted into Zoroastrianism, which, fun fact, is the oldest religion still largely practiced on Earth. And upon the rise of Abrahamic religions like Catholicism, demons had come to represent the forces of evil in a world outside of our own. And this is the
or just religions outside of Christianity.
If you down in the comments start pulling out the actuallys, I'll send you down to hell myself. As much as media and scripture love to wax the nitty-gritty details, what matters most here is their origin from some other world. Either a hell where the worst of humanity go after they die, or a primordial realm deemed evil by the powers that be. And they don't have to come from these hells originally. There are stories about humans becoming demons all the time. Even the most famous demon himself, Lucifer, Satan, Morningstar, was an angel before he fell. Demons aren't just evil, they personify it. You could argue human storytellers invented the concept of demons to explain where evil in the world comes from, the same way they invented Zeus or Thor to explain where thunderstorms came from. Often in stories, we see these little devils trying to coerce people to do the wrong thing, lead us into temptation, and deliver us to the evil one. But that doesn't mean that the demons on this list have to be evil themselves. If a game's world decides to treat demons as more of a humanized race, there might be those outside the fold that don't really want to be evil. Not all dwarves have beards, not all goblins are filthy, and not all demons aim to damn you. How a demon stands out from their fellow imps can be the thing that makes them interesting, be it physically, mentally, or morally. And as with the rest of Monster Month, we'll be ranking these baddies not based solely on their power, but on their influence, whether on other characters, on the games they're in, or on the memories that they impart on players, while also best exemplifying the qualities mentioned earlier. Sorry for all the litigation. This was actually the hardest monster to draw a box around this month, and hell's full of warriors. The devil really is in the details. But for now, let's begin our journey through these 10 circles of hell. I am the Green Scorpion, and these are my top 10 video game demons. Heaven protect us.
Alright, let's see who's first on the list.
This is actually kind of poetic because Monster Month 1 ended with Manny Calavera, my top skeleton from Grim Fandango.
Yeah, I remember him.
To bridge these 2 months, we're starting with his best friend,
Glottis.
I wish I could say I planned this.
Ooh.
In case you need a refresher from 8 years ago, Grim Fandango takes place in Mictlan, the afterlife of Aztec mythology where souls are meant to travel for 4 years before reaching their final resting place. And while we see many ancient Mesoamerican structures meant to uphold this form of afterlife and give everyone, good or bad, a clean slate, modern businessmen have co-opted this system of limbo with a fake merit-based travel agency. Working for this agency is Glottis, one of the biggest outliers on our list. He's definitely a demon, I mean, look at him, and everyone calls him such. More specifically, he's an elemental creature created by Mictlan itself to serve a specific task. So he's a life form from another world, an afterlife that's supposedly worse than wherever everyone heads to on a number 9 train, so he fits our base definition. But like Mictlan itself, Glottis isn't inherently good or evil. He comes from an ideology predating such a binary view on morality. And if that sounds really heady, don't worry, Glottis is actually pretty dumb. He just wants to fulfill his base purpose, fixing and driving cars. He's a literal speed demon. So long as he has a job to do, he likes to spend his free time with his best bud Manny, working on side projects like his custom car, the Bone Wagon, and developing a worrying gambling addiction. Glottis is actually quite prone to addictive vices, and sometimes you need to do some not-so-nice things to Glottis to get him back on track. Yeah, that fits. I've heard a lot of players say that they found Glottis more annoying than funny, and I get it. His voice can be kind of grating, and he's not always the most helpful companion. But most of these criticisms fade away at the start of Year 4, when after marching for months in the desert, we see what happens to demons who spend too long without performing their task. Without limos or ship engines to tinker with, Glottis begins to die. And this segment where you help smaller demons in a desperate attempt to revive him really raises the stakes for the last leg of the game. It makes me think Glottis is just a guy trying to do what he was made for. So if demons in other media are creatures of pure evil, can they really be blamed if doing evil is their only assignment? Well then again, Glottis doesn't just do his assignment. He's only in this mess because he chose to help us. The real evil in this game doesn't come from the elemental daimon. It comes from people, humans.
Yeah, true.
Or at least what used to be humans. A theme we'll be seeing a lot going forward is that demons only work as threats because there are people in the world capable of evil, even willing to choose evil, whereas demons often don't really have that choice. But that's just me getting overly philosophical about Grim Fandango.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Again, this game is supposed to be fun, but I also think it's deceptively deep. Glottis is another example of that. And while we can save him by strapping him to a rocket, kind of like pushing a car up to speed to recharge the battery, he still hits us in the heart one last time when we leave for the next world and have to say goodbye. He's a lot cuddlier than demons are supposed to be, and that's why he's only number 10, but what makes him a bad demon is what fittingly makes him a great demon.
You're the best boss I ever had.
You're on, Glottis. You're on.
Bye.
Let go now.
That was a good warm-up, but now let's talk about some real demonic masterminds. The sinister spawns that keep the gods busy. Plenty of games feature powerful demon lords that, if they set foot on our mortal plane, could raze it to the ground. Often these stories have been defeated in the exposition by warriors of legend, and even in a weakened state of imprisonment or near death, their malevolent machinations threaten the world at large, their return treated as an absolute lose state for the plot. Comic Foil and I actually dealt with one of these on the channel not so long ago, in fact, in our Let's Play of Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones. And while that's not everyone's favorite Fire Emblem plot, I've always enjoyed the way that they handled the Demon King Fomortiis. Fomortiis was defeated 800 years before our story takes place by a combination of heroes who would later found the 5 great kingdoms of Magvel. While Fomortiis couldn't be destroyed outright, not even by the 10 busted sacred weapons, he was separated and imprisoned in the 5 titular sacred stones, and generations of dragon people devoted their lives to guarding his old lair lest he ever return.
Basically,
goes to show that when people work together selflessly, any evil can be banished. But people aren't always so selfless, are they? Enter Leon, Prince of Grado and friend of the Renee twin lordlings Erica and Ephraim. Inspired by Erica's kindness and Ephraim's strength, Leon begins to study dark magic, not inherently evil in the world of Fire Emblem, but still a bit of a red flag, to find a way to help his people. This leads him to study one of the sacred stones for its potential healing properties.
Oh boy.
And through this, he starts really making a difference. The only thing is, the stone kind of reminds him of some intrusive thoughts that he's had in the past.
Oh?
You admire Erica, don't you, Leon? Too bad she'd never value a weakling like you. Not when she has her valiant brother to compare you to. She would sooner find worth in that shrewd Freljord prince, wouldn't she? Now, no
The
need to
devil
go
on
talk
your
to her.
shoulder.
Instead,
Look out.
Show her how great you truly are. What's that? Your father just died? What if I told you that I could help you bring him back? No one needs to know. It will serve to showcase you as a gifted healer, a true genius, because you are a genius.
Oh
I
boy.
shall grant you all of this, and in exchange...
Let me out.
Sacred Stones has heaps of subtext, and watching Leon's good intentions pave the path to hell is one of my favorites. Even when Leon is perfectly lucid, he admits Fomortiis couldn't have come back if Leon didn't really think all these things deep down.
Oh
the
boy.
Demon King just gave him a little push. His control
Yep.
over Leon
All it
is a
took
work
was-
of subtle art, but when it comes to war, he paints with a much wider brush. Legions of
Hence the
monsters gathered from
silver-tongued
the
devil.
Darkling Woods or summoned by Fomortiis himself wreak havoc on the countryside. Zombies, gorgons, giant spiders.
Ugh.
It's really an eclectic bunch. Joining
Creepy.
them are the 6 generals of Grado, including 3 new recruits who are monsters in their own right, as well as nobler veterans like Selena and Glenn, who might be ostensibly good people, but find themselves aiding in evil because they're just following orders. Only one wizened general resigns in time to escape a grisly death. And that's not even mentioning Orson and his wife, which...
Ugh.
Ugh. Fomortiis can really play both sides, manipulation or mass murder. I'd even call him genre savvy, targeting the sacred stones that are the only chance to defeat him, and playing on Erica's feelings for the Grado Prince. He deserves an Emmy for that performance, but I guess we can settle for the Stone of Renee. And that's before he takes to the field himself, where he's both terrifyingly powerful and not really that hard when you know what you're doing. To be fair, he's still powering up when your band of heroes show up to slay him. He's weakened by the Stone of Roston, but he's still got some good stats by Fire Emblem standards. His standard attack
Like,
can two-shot
nearly
even the
99.
tankiest
Look
of
at this.
units. He sports a devastating area of effect attack, the ability to spawn minions, and one of the scariest things a Fire Emblem boss can do, actually moving to get in attack range. He will wipe the floor with an unprepared party. But as the saying goes, if they stat it, we can kill it. Once you know that he'll always spend his first turn summoning minions rather than attacking, it's not hard to rush Erica and Ephraim in, warp a third guy in for good measure, and end the encounter before a proper enemy phase can even commence.
Damn.
Honestly makes him look like a chump, and that's the reason he's only number 9. But I see the vision
whatever
that they were
works,
going
right?
for with this guy, and I think it works great. The reason why I think Sacred Stones is ultimately on the good side of Fire Emblem history. People like to rag on Erica and the gang for making stupid impulsive decisions, but dismissing that as bad writing sells short what a good manipulator the Demon King is. He really plays on people's envy, their fear, their grief, and when it's time to throw down, he's got Zangief muscles and endless minions. Brains and brawn, the Demon King manages to make the cast look like idiots, punch them in the face, and convince the audience
much.
that it's the main character's fault. That is some
It-
masterful devil work.
Get rid of that, man. Oh. I'm not sure what's going on here, but it's...
If
well,
you haven't played
that's-
the game Catherine, you don't want the game Catherine spoiled, and you aren't watching this on YouTube Premiere, which makes it impossible for you to skip ahead,
True.
I recommend that you skip ahead. Here's your time code.
There you go.
Though I think me alluding to a spoiler here kind of gives a spoiler away because...
Yeah, it's Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine's a demon.
The C one.
Specifically, she's a succubus, an agent from the underworld sent to seduce men and drain their vitality through intimate acts. So basically, if Fomortiis wanted to be even more manipulative and put on a miniskirt. Why did I edit this?
Ew.
Anyway, the concept of succubi have existed in mythology since the 2000s BC, with stories of witches and sirens drawing men to their death. But only in medieval Europe did they get applied to specifically be demons. A lot of texts say that Lilith
Yeah, a lot
was
of them
the
are
first
like
demon,
water or
Adam's
air-based.
first wife
Even the
before
land-based
Eve, who was
ones.
bad because she didn't have sex the way God wanted, and went after the angel Samael instead. Yeah, the people who propagated these stories didn't really like women, and on another level, liked women too much. Real Frollo types. Catherine's modus operandi is to take the form of a man's ideal woman, slip into his bedroom, make his life a mess, and subject him to nightmares where they eventually die in a block tower game. If you die in the game, you die for real.
Over.
Our protagonist Vincent is particularly susceptible to this when Catherine comes around, as he's unhappy in his relationship with Catherine.
With a K.
Catherine with a K.
There you go.
Yeah, this is gonna get real confusing, so I'll do my best with providing proper visual context. Try to keep up. This is a weird game, and Catherine employs a lot of deception. It can be hard to untangle who she really is and what's an act. She comes into Vincent's life like a...
bad at it, pal.
lascivious wrecking ball, snuggling her way into an affair with him. Vincent doesn't seem to remember their night together each time, so I guess it's possible that she's just putting him to sleep each time. You can even argue about how consensual this relationship really is. Is Vincent knowingly cheating on Catherine, or is he just under Catherine's control? Well, that's demons for you, walking that fine line. It would be convenient for Vincent to claim that he had no agency. The devil is so much stronger than a man and all that. However, Vincent is terrible at handling the situation, and it takes him days to finally blurt out that he already has a girlfriend. Which Catherine likely knows already, but acts surprised to sow some more guilt. It's devious. And as we see in the light novel, Catherine doesn't even have to be successful in seducing people to trap them into nightmares. Johnny turns her down when she shows up in a form suspiciously similar to Catherine, but just the feelings she inspires are enough to doom people to their hell dreams. We also find out Erica is having nightmares, which tells me that the demons in this game might be transphobic. But as weird as it is for me to say this, Catherine isn't all that bad. The seduction gig is just a day job to her, one that she doesn't particularly enjoy if her speech about commitment is to be believed. And in a screwed up way, it serves a function. Demons do this to rid the human race of pitiful men who would cheat on their partners, thus protecting the future from more tragedy. If not with Catherine, these guys show that they have the capacity to cheat with someone else, so they all deserve to die according to the demon's nihilistic outlook. Vincent was clearly on his way to an unhappy marriage before Catherine showed up, that path of least resistance little fucker. And depending on your choices in the game, maybe Catherine does have real feelings for Vincent. Catherine wants a life of freedom and spontaneity, no labels and no chains. If Vincent decides that's what he wants too, they actually make for a pretty good couple. Alternatively, when Vincent breaks the affair off with Catherine to stay with Catherine, or instead start a relationship with Rin, Catherine goes insane. Like Jack Nicholson in The Shining insane. They say hell hath no fury like a woman's scorn. No, sir, hell hath plenty of that. Coquettish and complicated, Catherine will keep your life interesting, that's for sure. She can be your angel, or she can be your devil. And she's lying about that first one.
Yeah, that is definitely one you gotta be careful with. You never know what's gonna happen. She might just turn your soul in, for crying out loud. Like, if I don't have demons, I think it's just full demons all the way. I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll see half demons, but we'll see. Whew, sorry. Anyway, next. Ooh, Baldur's Gate. Alright. Who's next?
Lives, oh mortal lives, expire.
Hello, old friend.
Souls
Seen this with Josh.
go to their dooms in flame forevermore.
I play a lot of Dungeons & Dragons, and my fellow D&D nerds might share a thought I had going into this topic. Are demons and devils the same thing? In most games' universes, I'd say yes. They're basically synonyms, and maybe there's one demon who is the devil or whatever. But for years, D&D has made a distinction between the two. Both are separate races on the outer planes of existence, devils being the lawful evil entities of the Nine Hells, whereas demons are the chaotic evil entities of the Abyss. They share some physical similarities, but each have a different menagerie of variants, with the two factions forced to do battle for all eternity, which hopefully keeps them too busy to invade the lawful and chaotic
that'd be great.
planes.
Thank you very much.
TLDR, demons just kick your teeth in. Devils prefer to make a contract with you, force you into unwilling servitude, and if you don't comply, then they kick your teeth in.
Yep, pretty
In
much.
any other universe, they would all be treated as beings from hell, so I'm including devils on this list.
Why not?
So why does this matter? Well, while Baldur's Gate 3 takes place in the Forgotten Realms, meaning deep lore characters like the Archdevil Mephistopheles don't originate from a video game and don't qualify for this list, his son Raphael makes his first ever appearance in a video game and therefore does qualify. It's on a technicality, which is exactly the way Raphael loves it. In your party's search for a cure to brain parasites, Raphael will at some point make his presence known to you, whisking you off to his hellish abode, the House of Hope. There, he'll wine and dine the party and offer you just the cure you've been looking for, in exchange for your soul, of course. That's how Raphael likes to do business. Find someone in a desperate situation, and then prop himself up as the only way out. And in his...
castle.
histrionic monologues, he'll often refer to himself as a savior, but most players will hesitate to take him up on his offer, after which he sends you home and asks you to take some time to think about it. Throughout the game, you'll meet many people playing deal or no deal with the devil. Asterion wants to know what the scars on his back say, and might make a deal to find out in exchange for killing a monster. That monster turns out to be another contractee, Yurgir, who isn't exactly happy with how his deal went, and if you beat him, Raphael will pick him up to negotiate a new deal. Corilla will tail you throughout the wilderness, urging you to take Raphael up on his offer and even bailing you out of a jam here and there to ensure you live long enough to do so. And it turns out that part of Corilla's deal is making sure that you make a deal, all in hopes that she can save her sister that Raphael's got captive. The guy has influence, that's for sure. And when it comes to terms of services, there's no beating this guy. In terms of good old-fashioned combat, well, it's not going to be easy. See, you need this magic hammer that he has, and you can either trade it to him for the Crown of Karsus, which he'll use to unite the Nine Hells under his rule and eventually spread his kingdom to the material plane, or you can go to Raphael's mansion and steal it. I recommend the latter because, 1, we don't deal with the devil, and 2, we get to meet Harlip, an incubus that looks like a younger Raphael sent by his father to keep Raphael distracted. And apparently it's been working, as Raphael loves himself so much that he will spend hours a day with this sexy doppelganger. That's not just narcissism, that's Narcissus levels of narcissism. And fun fact, he's not even that good at it. You can ask Harlip if Raphael is good in bed, and Harlip will just laugh. Then bring this up to Raphael before the fight, and he will freak.
You contemptuous creature!
Anyway, if you decide to steal the hammer, he'll catch you with a squad of Cambion warriors, and then it's time to fight. Even without his advantage in numbers, Raphael's stats show off just how tough D&D devils can be. Improved initiative to move faster, magic resistance to avoid spell effects, infernal resolution so that he can't be stunned for more than one turn, high range fire spells including Hellfire that ignores fire resistance, a second more monstrous form with multi-attack talons, a ton of health and resistance to most damage types. He's got it all. Even if you use radiant damage, one of the only things that he doesn't resist, he'll automatically punish the user by stunning them. So don't think that you can just lean on your cleric or paladin too much. Raphael doesn't mess around, and it's all in service of a very effective and memorable villain. I mean, sure, we've seen this kind of antagonist before. It's a D&D story. I expect it to be tropey. But everything about this guy comes together for an interesting and easily identifiable asshole. He's not just a devil, he's royalty. Incredibly entitled,
the royal devil.
And with enough daddy issues that he really loses his cool when he doesn't get his way. It's some overcompensating energy, Harlip can confirm. And once again,
with a laugh.
in all his immense power, he still needs humans, or at least humanoids, to choose evil. Otherwise, he really doesn't have a plan. I think we're onto something here. The best demons need people to be scary.
Very much.
And I kind of love that. It's not a flaw, it's a feature. And any good DM knows that player agency doesn't ruin your villains. It makes them better.
It won't be long before I come knocking at your door. Ta-ta.
Ta-ta for now. Thanks, Raphael. We'll see you around.
After the grand epic masterpiece that is Baldur's Gate 3,
Pony
you
Island?
might be surprised by our
Asmodeus.
talking about the 3-hour indie game, Pony Island. Once again, I'm putting the weirdest entry into the number 6 spot, because how do I compare HD horrors to pixelated ponies? But believe me when I say that this next entry affected me on a visceral level. So, Pony Island, an immersive horror-adjacent game whose dev went on to make Inscription. In this game, you're trapped in an arcade, strapped in front of an old computer, or later an arcade cabinet, by the devil himself. And it turns out that Satan has a budding interest in game design. He's really self-conscious about it too. It's a bare-bones runner game, and his attempts to make it more interesting are woefully misguided. You'll have to cleverly navigate the user interface to get around menus and hack in new features to progress, which makes Satan really mad. But Satan isn't our number 6 pick. He's joined by 3 unholy subordinates, represented here as subroutines on his computer: Azazel, Beelzebub, and Asmodeus. Like Mephistopheles from D&D lore, these names are all taken from actual demons in Christian faith, which theologians have written about for centuries in various deuterocanonical biblical works. You'll need to delete all 3 of these demons before you can leave, and they don't go down without some sort of fight. The first 2 present particularly tough challenges in each of the game's 2 main mechanics, the pony runner sections and the recoding sections. But Asmodeus utilizes a vastly different approach. He claims to possess a more sophisticated artificial intelligence, and challenges you instead to a game. A simple game, but one that he has never lost. As he explains, you simply need to keep your eyes on him for the next few minutes. It's a straightforward Faustian bargain, but of course that means that he plans to seriously fuck with you. To prove that you've been giving him your undivided attention, Asmodeus will occasionally ask you to repeat phrases to him, usually ones that appear briefly under his sprite in small text. This can be tough to read even if you're looking for it, but then there's the trick. Asmodeus asks you to write something profane, like some sort of insult. Sure, okay. Then as the game continues, you receive a pop-up message on Steam. It seems Asmodeus has just sent that insult to one of your closest Steam friends, and they're really confused. You cheeky dick waffle! I was not expecting that one! Well, worry not, it didn't actually contact your friend. It just read your Steam friends list and imitated one of them. This isn't a real message. But while you were figuring that out, you probably missed the message that Asmodeus flashed in the center of the screen, and now you just lost the game. Asshole! In all of my years of Steam, I have never seen a game use the friends feature in this way, and I feel violated. He's got a couple more tricks up his sleeve too, including faking a game crash. So do you wait for the program to load or force it closed? Well, if you force it closed, you just lost the game. Look at his little wink when you figure it out. Screw this guy! If you went into this blind and beat his game the first time, kudos to you.
Good job.
But I have a feeling plenty of gullible gamers would have lost their souls if this was a real devil's bet. Once you pass his last test, he bows out respectfully and allows you to delete him. He is a devil at the end of the day, evil but lawful. It's a short segment, but for me at least, it's simultaneously really clever and kind of chilling. I've failed and died in plenty of other games thousands, maybe millions of times, but a loss rarely feels so personal. I didn't make a bad move in Fire Emblem or miss a jump in Mario. I made an agreement and failed to follow simple directions. If demons are real and they actually want my soul, I might actually make an easy mark.
Yeah. I feel like them in this game.
Was that too abstract? Fine. Next is the big bad pig man.
Oh, yep. Hi, Ganon. Here's the big boy.
Ganondorf is no stranger to this channel. He's one of my favorite villains, one of my favorite spellcasters, and he's in a ton of my favorite games. And when I talk about him, I tend to call him by his birth name Ganondorf, and by the shorter nickname Ganon interchangeably. Because it's true, in a sense. Ganon is Ganondorf. But in another sense, these are 2 separate entities. Quick lore refresher for those out of the Hyrulean loop. Long ago, there was a demon king named Demise. He was defeated by Link in Skyward Sword, the earliest game in the timeline. But he swore his influence would live on to drive other enemies of the crown to challenge Link and Zelda's descendants for all of eternity. Unknown generations later, Ganondorf Dragmire is born into the Gerudo tribe as a once-in-a-century male heir, becoming their so-called King of Thieves. This man goes on to betray the King of Hyrule in a diplomatic ruse, take over the kingdom, and be challenged by a new Link at the end of Ocarina of Time. In the last stage of their battle, Ganondorf on the verge of death utilizes the Triforce of Power to become the Demon Ganon, whose outer form channels the power of demise with a twisted physicality matching the ugliness of Ganondorf's soul.
Ooh.
The pig beast is still defeated, in some timelines anyway,
Yeah.
and goes down in history as Ganon, the Demon King. In subsequent appearances within the different timelines, this evil figure returns as either the human Ganondorf or the pig beast Ganon, sometimes able to switch between the two.
Pretty much.
And while in past countdowns I've spent untold minutes analyzing the psychology of this desert-dwelling despot, for this list we're more interested in the demon that lives within him, the one put there by demise. Granted, demon is something of a catch-all term in Zelda. Does it refer to actual hellspawn, or is it just a generic term for monster, like calling someone you don't like a fiend? As far as I can tell, there's not an actual hell in Zelda games. This is a purely fictional universe with its own mythology, built around a trio of goddesses and their magical triangles. However, there's plenty of similarities between Ganon and the Judeo-Christian devils. Like many traditional Western demons, Ganon takes after a farm animal, in this case a swine, complete with cloven hooves. He can only be killed by particular holy weapons, that being the Master Sword or arrows of pure light. And while he sometimes wields a pair of swords, he more often carries the Trident of Power as his signature weapon, effectively
I think it really depends on the game.
This is especially prevalent in the older Zelda games, which have been placed on the Fallen timeline. A continuity where Ganon defeated Link at the end of Ocarina of Time, and just never stopped being the pigman on campus. Ganon is also a master of monsters. In some instruction manuals, it is said that he created moblins and bokoblins in his own image. And while these enemies appear in some games predating the first Ganon, like Skyward Sword and Minish Cap, I always assumed moblins were just the type of monster that any demon could conjure up if they were powerful enough. Back then, it was Demise, and now it's Ganon. And they have changed their appearances between games. Monsters can be summoned out of the ether and disappear when they die. And sure, there's a Watsonian explanation for this, despawning the monsters saves on system memory compared to keeping their dead bodies on screen, which would also probably affect the game's age rating, but having them poof into smoke upon defeat sells this idea that they are brought forth from another realm and return when they are destroyed. Maybe not to hell itself, but some other similar dark dimension, or perhaps just a reservoir of dark power waiting to be shaped. And on that subject, Ganon has actually spent a lot of time in a number of other realms. He's too powerful to kill outright in most cases,
off to the Twilight.
so often he's sealed away somewhere for a time, only to break out centuries later. And at one point, he was sealed away in the Sacred Realm, which he made into his own personal hell, linked to the past's Dark World, just through his own malignant influence. One of the biggest questions since Tears of the Kingdom came out is whether or not it and Breath of the Wild actually connect to the rest of the Zelda timeline. That's a question outside of the scope of this
Zelda
video.
said he gave up
what I
to
want to know
become
is
the
why
Ganon.
Calamity Ganon and Ganondorf the Man seem to exist as two completely separate entities, being defeated in two separate games. At some point, the demon inside Ganondorf just left, I guess, and started doing his own thing. Maybe Matt Mercerdorf is a reincarnation separate from past Ganondorfs, who died and left this cloud of formless swine storm to circle Hyrule Castle. And that just illustrates Ganon's staying power. No matter how many times civilization crumbles and reforms, this creature is still there, being brought back either by the work of his minions or when time itself can no longer contain him. Demise's greatest trick here was to put this energy into humanity. Who knows, maybe there were other smaller ne'er-do-wells throughout history born with Demise's influence and spurred on to do evil, probably stamped out by stronger good guys. But when Ganondorf carried this power and used it to steal a third of the Triforce, he ensured that the demon entity that is Ganon would be a staple of reality, doomed to repeat over and over again so long as the world exists. So again, as powerful as demons are, it's that little dose of humanity that lets them really do damage. Ganondorf didn't use Demise's infernal powers to break down the door of the Temple of Time. He used his station as a Gerudo ambassador and his skills as the King of Thieves to trick a couple of naive kids to do it for him. Ultimately, I think it's a mistake to treat Ganondorf and Ganon as two separate characters, because it's his mortal facet that allows his immortal self to shine, and vice versa. A demonic force keened by a man's ambition. The man, the myth, the monster.
So, Omori? It was nice.
Yeah, I'm onto something here. Demons are only as powerful as the human emotions that bring them to life. Greed, pride, fear. And nowhere is that more apparent than the horror genre's Ocarina of Time, Silent Hill 2. Great game, it'd be a shame if I spoiled it. But honestly, I think most people either know the twists already or resign themselves to never play this game and would rather hear it from an unthreatening YouTuber.
Fair.
There's a remake coming out soon though, so if you're one of those lucky few, consider skipping ahead. At the very least, I'm sure you've heard of Pyramid Head. Or as Sheikah and I have come to affectionately refer to him as...
Geometry Steve!
James Sunderland encounters a number of unsettling creatures in the titular small foggy town. Murderous stitched together nurses, mannequins with extra legs, Eddie who just sits here eating pizza. But the star of the show is undoubtedly Pyramid Head.
Unkillable.
He serves as this game's stalker enemy, similar to Mr. X or Nemesis from the Resident Evil series. He's not always chasing you though. Early in the first level, the hotel, you can catch him watching you on the other side of some rubble, just standing there. Menacingly. Your official introduction to him, I don't even want to show on screen. You're hiding in a closet watching him, well, have his way with one of the smaller enemies. This is a super edgy, grimdark moment, and if the game came out today, I'd say that they were going too far in the name of shock value.
Yeah, probably.
But they actually justify this thematically. See, James's experience in Silent Hill has a tenuous relationship with reality. He's in mortal peril against deformed humanoids that defy description, walking through doors that somehow teleport him impossibly to other buildings, and at one point you'll be trapped in a flooded stairwell with Pyramid Head, unable to harm him and just waiting for the water to recede. Yet somehow this hotel building filled up with water up to the 3rd floor. How the hell does that work? And James reacts to all this not with sheer terror, but mild dread, like he's in a dream or something. These obstacles are vastly unwelcome, but he at least seems to accept the possibility that they're happening to him without much disbelief. That's because most of what's happening to James is psychological in nature. His wife Mary recently died from a terminal disease, a slow and laborious process that challenged their relationship and, as we eventually come to find out, ended in James euthanizing Mary in a less than legal way. So what we're facing here is James's inner demons. The nurses are twisted representations of the many healthcare workers James had to deal with over the last few years. They and the leggy mannequins are a grotesque representation of James's libido, as during this time he longed for sexual connection with other women, but felt disgusted with himself for feeling this way while his wife suffered. The mysterious Maria is an odd doppelganger of Mary, formed from his confused and complex relationship with her, as she both goads him into liking her and shames him for leaving her behind for even a second. And Pyramid Head, the big granddaddy of them all, is James's own desire to be punished for everything he's done and every negative thought that he has ever had about his late wife. He is a big bad boss of James's own making, tasked with the goal of making James miserable, only stopping when James can accept what he's done and in some way forgive himself. That's not to say that Pyramid Head doesn't exist in universe. The town of Silent Hill has a colorful history with demonic cults and connections to the Nightmare Realm. Other games in the series show very real physical monsters roaming the streets. Even in the same game, we can see other wanderers like James who are clearly being tormented by their own demons, some of them even bleeding into James's world when he interacts with those people. So Pyramid Head, or the power that created him, clearly came from somewhere. But his specificity to James's struggle is what makes him so captivating, and why fans groan when he shows up in other media outside of James's psyche. Movies, other games in the series, heck, even games outside of the series like Dead by Daylight and Bomberman for some reason. It sort of ruins his mystique a bit, but I can hardly blame Konami because this design is way too good. Demonstrably human with some rippling abs, but with a big unwieldy rusted slab for a hat. Apparently earlier designs would have made him look more like James himself. I imagine that's what he looks like beneath the metal, but the character designers insisted that his face not be seen. And look, I'd love to tell you that the triangular visage is some reference to the Greek god Hypnos or the Pythagorean theorem or something that, but I honestly don't know why he wears that damn thing. And that's what makes it scary. It's abstract art. It evokes a feeling, not a meaning. Personally, I think he wears a sharp heavy iron because he's an entity of pain, as much to himself as he is to others. He's a part of James, and once again, it's that human element that makes him truly terrifying. and truly rewarding if you sneak past him to his underground den and get his giant cleaver as an optional weapon. That's your power to wield, James, if you can just acknowledge it. You are the mistakes you made. You are the evil that's inside of you. And the scariest thing about any inner demon is knowing that you could have stopped it at any time.
Yeah, but that's usually the problem. We're not usually ready to confront our trauma, because it takes a while. Be real. It takes a while for us to realize that, yeah, we're definitely assholes. I mean, there's no two ways about it, right? Anyway, moving along. We're down to the final 3. Sticks.
Unfortunately, there are plenty of demons that take much more than self-discipline and understanding to
True.
quell. The ones where entire realms of hellish armies are led by immensely powerful abyssal overlords. If a video game
Diablo?
delves into big fantasy mythologies, chances are that there are at least a few great demon gods in there somewhere. Sargeras from Warcraft, Gargos from Killer Instinct, Astaroth and Ghosts and Goblins. But aside from Fomortiis, I didn't really include a lot of these big bads because, while they're immensely powerful and in some cases deeply written, they all fill the similar role of just big evil incarnate guy. At a certain point, my brain can't fathom the level of power that they have, and I stop seeing them as characters, more just aspects of a game's lore. But there is one big bad demon daddy who is so eponymous in gaming that I knew I'd have to include him.
Diablo.
The Lord of Terror, the prime evil Al Diabolos, also known as Diablo.
There we go. There's a franchise behind this guy.
It's always a power move when a game is named after its final boss.
True.
Before you even boot up the game, you're already building anticipation for this final clash against the monster at the center of it all. I've played all the mainline Diablo games at some point or another, but I gotta be honest, it's never a series I'd get super into. These are grueling dungeon crawlers, requiring a ton of time and effort to grind up your character and make it to the bottom of the demon's lair, time I never really had a chance to commit to. So for me, Diablo was always this unreachable goal of some sort. A master behind the curtain that I would never reach, the unbeatable evil. Only recently have I truly delved into the lore of the series, and in doing so, I learned that Diablo isn't even necessarily the biggest bad in the series, but arguably the best. Long story short, a long time ago, the one and only creator god decided to remove all evil from himself, and this evil became a big dragon. The two fought, and their battle left in its wake the worlds of heaven, hell, and eventually sanctuary, where all the mortal humans would live. Spawning from the severed head of the dark dragon were 3 brothers known as the prime evils: Baal, the lord of destruction, Mephisto, the lord of hatred, and Diablo, the lord of terror. And I love the relationship between these 3. They spend a lot of time warring for power over hell, but whenever the chips are down and another group is threatening them, they always go out of their way to help each other out. They'll protect you from the bullies unless they're the bullies. Typical sibling rivalry stuff. Diablo may be the youngest of the 3, but he's also got the greatest foresight in waging war and outmaneuvering others on the stage of astral politics. Case in point, all 3 brothers were eventually ousted from hell by a demon coup, forced to live instead in the human realm where they were imprisoned in soul stones by an order of mages. But this was all part of Diablo's plan, as that put them in prime position to eventually reach the World Stone and the source of all creation, and humans are great tools. Diablo 1 sees you infiltrating Diablo's new lair beneath the Tower of Tristram, where he's driven the local king Leoric mad, and now leads an army known as the Wrathborn. And look, I never did it, but if you can walk into this room of cultists shooting fireballs at you and Diablo's big dinosaur ass charging you, good for you. I never made it this far. The guy has a slew of fire and claw attacks and lightning breath that can one-shot you if you aren't specifically equipped to resist it. Many players will try to set up a teleporter back to town so that they can come back and fight him at full health, but don't let him see you doing that. He has the tendency to place bone prisons around those teleporters and beat you to a pulp before you can escape. Even if you win, he still kinda wins himself when he's returned back to his soul stone. Being so afraid of his possible return, Prince Aiden attempts to keep the seal by thrusting the soul stone into his own body, a terrible idea born of panic. This just allows Diablo to eventually possess Aiden and start his next big evil plan. And this is only possible because of Diablo's dominion over terror. the same reason his name in the title creates so much dread and anticipation. It might not sound as powerful as Baal's destruction, but terror is a vicious force that controls the minds of people.
Sometimes, you know?
If you've mainly played Diablo 2, you might get the idea that Mephisto is the brother to look out for, but fast forward to Diablo 3 and we see the D-Man make his grand return, harnessing the captured souls of all of the other Dark Lords and using Aiden's daughter as a vessel to return, now as the one prime evil. Not only does he make a mess of the human world, he marches right up to the gates of heaven and nearly brings it down if not for the intervention of a really dedicated player character. Sure, Diablo loses a lot, both in the lore and in the in-game story events. He's a video game bad guy, there has to be a canon way to defeat him. But I've seen the Steam data of these games and I can say with certainty that most players won't complete this endeavor. There are more playthroughs of this game where Diablo wins than where he loses, and even if he does lose, it's just a matter of time before his grand return. As long as there are people out there who fear him, he's never truly gone. Which makes it really funny that you were able to play as him in Heroes of the Storm, just this big world-ending archdemon standing alongside Tracer and Murky the Murloc. Check the strategy wiki, Diablo is a high-damage tank. Yeah, I bet he is!
No kidding. You just can't get rid of the guy. Number 2.
Daunting as it may seem to square up against the Lord of Terror himself, Diablo is far from the strongest demon on this list. At peak strength, I think our number 2 wipes the floor with him. Though he comes from a much humbler beginning than the severed head of a primeval god dragon. Now, our silver medalist starts the game as a mere high school student. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne tells the story of a silent protagonist who comes to be known as the Demi-fiend. And bear with me here because Shin Megami Tensei is an incredibly complex story, requiring me to omit and simplify information lest we spend hours here just trying to grasp the basics.
Very much.
Have you ever seen how Neon Genesis Evangelion ends? Well, imagine that as the first half hour and you got SMT3. Our protagonist starts as a pretty blank slate, joining his friends to visit their favorite teacher in the hospital. He quickly finds, however, that the hospital is the center of a cult ritual, which brings about the conception, an apocalypse designed by God to end the world and set the stage for the birth of a new one. In the meantime, we're in the Vortex world, a chaotic limbo perfect for demons to roam. Not an easy place for a human to survive. Our protagonist would have quickly perished had he not been noticed by Lucifer himself, who felt his lack of conviction and any apparent characteristics would make him the perfect pawn. Lucifer drops a parasite on our hero, turning him into the Demi-fiend, a being with the body and magical prowess of a demon, but the heart and soul of a human, and the perfect blunt instrument for the malevolent machinations of other smarter demons. In this metaphysical battlefield, the remaining humans compete to decide the nature of the new world. If a human has a strong enough philosophy of what the world should be, called a reason, they can contract a demonic benefactor who will then help them wrest power from other factors and prove to the Great Will, aka God, that their vision is what's best. However, being part demon now, the Demi-fiend isn't allowed to propose his own reason anymore. Not that the poor kid had a great conviction of what the world should be anyway. Poor guy just wanted to bring flowers to a sick teacher. Instead, he can align himself with any of the 3 main reasons to reach one of the game's multiple endings, each with their own merits and flaws. The cult leader Hikawa wants a world without individuality, where we're all just cogs in a machine and can't harm each other. Your old school friend Isamu wants a world of hyper-individuality where everyone gets their own planet to shape, but there's no human connection. And Chiaki, the girl Demi-fiend actually wanted to ask out before this mess, is now the figurehead of a Darwinian survival of the fittest world where might makes right. So all these reasons sound pretty extreme, but whichever one you side with, you'll start to see changes in the Demi-fiend's attitude as he tips the scales in that direction. Alternatively, as a demon, you can give God the middle finger and renounce this process in general. One ending allows you to set the world back exactly the way it was, which God's representatives sneer at, but Lucifer applauds you on. Makes sense, the biblical Lucifer was also one for letting people live the way they want without having to abide by the rules of God's garden.
Pretty much.
However, if you show a lack of conviction, you'll halt the new world's birth and things will remain as the Vortex world, which is great for you as a demon, I guess, but a major bummer for humanity. Finally, the Maniac's re-release and following versions of the game you can tackle some extra challenges to unlock the true demon ending, where you break the system itself and sever God's control of the world-making process. This leaves us with an uncertain ending, but one that, to me, feels like the truest ending for who the Demi-fiend has become. It says a lot that this ending is called True Demon. In most stories, we assume demons are the bad guys, and I tend to agree. But from a certain point of view, demons are just the creatures that challenge God's absolute rule over everything. Like, maybe it is a little messed up that Adam and Eve aren't allowed to have the fruit of knowledge and have to stay in the garden like God's little ant farm. Similarly, maybe it's messed up that God made a universe where billions of people can get killed just because a cult leader in Japan put the secret code to start the conception. The true demon ending is saying, fuck you Hikawa for starting this mess, fuck you God for making a system where you have the final say over the universe, and Lucifer, you led me on this path to become a demon, but you know what? Fuck you too for manipulating me! In true demon fashion, the Demi-fiend stands against anyone who would make an executive decision over what's right for everyone else, and he's got the strength to protect this ideal. And all of this is just scratching the surface of the chaotic narrative that is Shin Megami Tensei 3. I highly recommend checking it out for yourself if you ever get the chance. And while the Demi-fiend is the only main character here, he'd make plenty of other appearances. First as a DLC party member in SMT 4, and then as a super boss in SMT 5, where we see him lamenting his loss of self from the actions he's taken, feeling more like a tool of destruction now than an actual person. And man is this boss hard! The dude summons extremely powerful demons to help him, including Thor, Gira Makala, and his ride-or-die manic pixie dream girl who can full heal him. He'll resummon them every time one dies, but you can't just focus him down. If he goes 5 turns without having to resummon, he'll instead use Gaia Rage, which is essentially a full party wipe. Also, if you use reflector moves like Tetrakarn, Demi-fiend gets pissed and uses Gaia Rage anyway. Like the super bosses in Persona, you have to play by his rules or he just flips the table. Meanwhile, he and his demon buds are hitting you for ludicrous amounts of damage. And would you believe that this isn't even the hardest version of this boss? There's an even worse version in a spin-off game called Digital Devil Saga Avatar Tuner. Because we at Shin Megami Tensei believe that there's also room to be less accessible. The Demi-fiend was just a normal, unassuming kid who got dealt a bad hand by fate, and rather than accepting death, he decided to take his vengeance on fate itself. He's a statement that no one, not evil cult leaders, powerful demons, or apparent gods, get to be in charge of everything. Maybe not everyone will be able to take control of their own destiny, but if a system is unfair, eventually someone will come along who's willing to sacrifice their very essence to take it down. The ones in charge of that system will often call those people demons.
I should play that game. Anyway, number 1.
At the end of the day, demons are a pretty abstract concept. To get on board with a demon character, they have to be relatable, and all of these characters have done that through their relationships with mortal characters. Glottis exists for the service of the once human citizens of the afterlife. Asmodeus derives enjoyment and purpose from challenging humans to his game of wits. Fomortiis, Catherine, Raphael, and Diablo all depend on unwitting humans to achieve their goals. Ganon exists as part of a human. Pyramid Head exists within a human's psyche. And the Demi-fiend was once human who, depending on your choices in the game, was forced to give up his last shreds of humanity. I'm sure a lot of these characters would be interesting in a game taking place entirely in the Netherworld, but it's the mortals that help define these immortal beings through juxtaposition. So for our final entry, I'm picking the most human demon I can find. In fact, he's half of each.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure this is a surprise to no one.
Come on.
This party's getting
crazy. Let's rock. Oh boy. Come on. There we go. Come on, you all knew it was gonna be Dante. Yeah, I wasn't sure if he was gonna count half
Dante
demons.
may only be half demon, but the reasons behind that are both fascinating and fit perfectly into the themings of this countdown. Dante and his older brother Virgil were born to their human mother Eva and their demon father Sparta, the latter of which was a proud warrior who turned his back on demonkind due to his love of humanity. Sparta died closing the main portal to the demon realm, which is why Earth's not constantly flooded with Balrogs and the like, But that didn't stop the demon Lord Mundus from sending an attack team to kill Eva out of retribution. Not only did Dante lose his mother, he was also separated from Virgil, each assuming the other was dead. And to acknowledge the literary elephant in the room, Dante and Virgil are named after the two main characters of the Divine Comedy, written by an Italian poet named Dante as a fictitious account of being guided through the 9 layers of hell by his tour guide Virgil. Eva must have thought she was pretty clever with those names. So what we have here are two brothers with the same upbringing, ended by the same traumatic event. Both are nigh indestructible badasses with a penchant for swords and cool jackets. But a difference in their nature affected how they each let this harrowing situation change them. Virgil did his best to forget his human side, closing off his emotions and seeking power so that he could never experience loss like this again. Dante, on the other hand, honed his combat skills, becoming a private paranormal investigator and off-hours bounty hunter so that he could protect others from ever feeling what he felt. Dante embraces his humanity and wants to make the world a better place to honor his mother. Not that you take Dante for the hero type. Dante works really hard to put up the front that he's just in this for the money, and most of his greatest adventures were due to some sort of personal beef. He helps Trish because she looks like his dead mom, and he leaps head first into any situation involving Virgil. Once he learns Nero's his nephew, he becomes a regular helicopter parent. But in the margins of his big stories, you can see that he's really secretly trying to be the good guy for the community. His contract business, the titular Devil May Cry, doesn't bring in a lot of money, mainly because he refuses any jobs where he'd have to hurt normal people, and often refuses payment from poor people having real problems with monsters. He's in serious debt to Lady, though it doesn't help that he fills his office with fancy luxuries like electric guitars and pool tables. Look, I get it, gotta draw in customers with a cool aesthetic. That pool table's a business expense. It does help that he never has to pay hospital bills, even when he's impaled through the chest, which happens a lot. And he only ever seems to eat pizza, so that's gotta save some money.
Pizza.
Yeah, a lot of the good Samaritan nature is obfuscated from the front he puts as an aloof cool guy. I could probably have just played clips of Dante fighting, and most of you would get why he's number 1. He's being awesome 24/7. Well, okay, maybe 23/7. Gotta account for some of the awkward voice acting.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light.
Yeah, that's...
What am I fighting for?
Got that one?
Dante is like a flashy car that you take for a test drive just because it looks cool, but once you're behind the wheel, you realize that the inside is pretty nice too. This does beg the question though. Does this make him a worse entry for this list, being only half demon and being more motivated by his human side? Well, it might be if he wasn't kicking all kinds of full-blood demon ass.
True.
Dante's human half, how he's in touch with his emotions, makes him better at being a demon. Sure, he initially rejected his demon self the same way Virgil rejected his human self, but through their adventure in DMC 3, he learned to embrace that power that his father had left them, while at the same time being able to reach Virgil's heart and bring into the side of relative good. That's why his shop is called Devil May Cry. Dante got that name when he realized that shedding a tear over his brother did not change the fact that he was a demon, that these things could coexist beautifully. It's his demon power that lets him stand up to other supernatural threats, but it's his human wit that allows him to maneuver around the comparatively single-minded fiends and dretches, even harnessing his enemies' powers and reshaping them into some of the most badass weapons imaginable. Like I said with Ganon and Ganondorf, what makes Dante so great is the demon's power matched with the human's ambition. Or in this case, the human's compassion. This is a guy who could probably be the world's best swordmaster or gunslinger, but he willingly accepts a sexy killer Michael Jackson hat from Miko just because he knows it'll make her happy. He's a guy who will fight Nero's dad for him just because he knows how much it'll mess him up to destroy his own family. He's the gatekeeper between Earth and Hell, and he's gonna make sure if any demons come through that they're gonna be on their best behavior or be sent home in pieces. He's cool, he's multifaceted, he's just a little bit goofy, and he is my number 1 greatest demon in video games. I'm the Green Scorpion, and fellas, we're just getting started. Take some time to shake off that hellish chill and say some prayers if you have to, because next time, I have a simple question for y'all. Are you pondering what I'm pondering?
Pondering what I'm pondering. Wonder what that means. Pondering what I'm pondering. I don't know. Oh, yep, I had a feeling it was gonna be Dante. pretty much made it look badass to be a demon, half demon, but come on. No? Hey. Makes sense that the two halfers, you know, the Demi-fiend and Dante were the top. I mean, demons could spend all they want, but they reject humanity. Pretty much game over for them. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Let me know your favorite demon, and I'll see you guys next time. Adios!